Hello there. Welcome to Now Tell Us. Now, this is a place where we have guests come and tell us stories. They come and educate us. They come and inspire us. They come and give cause some highlight, something that is going on and they're passionate about. So, basically, this is where we have guests come and speak. They tell us, and we listen. And I hope you're ready to listen to today's guest because she's an interesting guest. Yeah. She's an interesting guest, and she will be here shortly. And just a reminder, all those of you who are watching or those who get to watch after we are through, the past episodes and future episodes are found at nowtellus.com. So you can always go in there and watch the videos. We have them on the or broadcast or that, rather podcast platforms, Audible, iTunes, Spotify, name them. Yeah, that's nowtellus.com. And now, without taking one more minute, we welcome to the show our guest who is none other than Sylvia Worsham. Welcome.
Thank you, Anthony. It's so awesome to be here with you this morning.
Yes, and we are honored to have you here and excited to hear what you have to tell us today. Yes,
Excited to be here.
to begin with, would like to know who is Sylvia and where is she from?
I'm originally from South Texas. I'm Sylvia Worsham. I'm based out of Austin, Texas now, but I grew up on the border with Texas and Mexico. And I was raised Mexican by two Mexico born parents. So I was raised here in the United States. And luckily, I made it to Austin when I married my second husband. And I've got two kids and a dog who you may or may not see behind me. You may come up. And I'm excited because I am living the best life now. I didn't start off that way, though. I
Oh,
started off in a very different environment than I am now.
okay, and
So, love to.
we'll get to know much about that. Now, when you mentioned Texas, I love Texas, and I know many.
Who doesn't, right? Everything's big in Texas.
Texas. I used to watch the movies, and I see the horses. And do you know how to ride a horse? That's one question.
Well, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
I've been horseback riding a lot, in my lifetime, but I never took classes, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of respect when you deal with animals, but I do love, horseback riding but it's not something that we Texans do all the time. It's just something we do recreationally. Some people actually do it as a sport, though, down here in Texas,
Okay.
but I'm mostly, like I was explaining to you at the beginning, um of the call. I'm in the capital, and so I live in Austin, Texas, and what we do out here is mostly pickleball, and that's what we
Okay.
play a lot. A lot of racket sports out here and
So the
cycling.
horse riding is mostly in the movies that we used to watch.
Yes, yes, it's kind of like it's a stereotypical thing that we think of the Texans,
Uh-huh.
or we think of barbecue too, right? Because
Yeah,
we're in the
okay.
South.
Yeah,
We're
we
in the
love
South,
barbecue.
and barbecue is amazing in Austin, Texas.
Ah,
Something I love to
I
eat.
I would love to be one day there. Now, we come to Sylvia, who, when I was reading your story, and now episode is known as From Survivor to Thriver. I was reading your story and I come to a part where you talk of miracles. And
Yes.
we love hearing about miracles. You have a miraculous story. Now, dive us into it, please. Maybe begin from where you grew up and maybe what you said that you didn't live such a good life in the beginning. And then you will tell us about the miracles.
Well, I started off, I grew up with parents. When you grow up in an immigrant household here
Mm-hmm.
in the States, you you have this mentality of you've got to achieve because it will equate to being happy.
Mm-hmm.
So the more successful you are, the more you're worth, and you've proven your worth in a country. And when you're little and you see your dad working so hard, you grow up with beliefs believing that you're not enough for your hardworking dad. So you must achieve to get his attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I achieved to the point of perfection. And I ended up in corporate America, which is the best place if you're wanting to achieve and to make money and thrive in that way. But but you can be working 50 to 60-hour work weeks, and it cost me my first marriage. I ended up
Mhm.
getting divorced, and my son was young. He was 4 years old when I got divorced. And then I started dating my second husband, and he decided that he wanted us to travel to Louisiana, which is where he's from, for Easter
Mhm.
weekend. Which is was a single mom, and we don't really date when you're a single mom. We
Yeah.
are looking to have a more solid relationship. So when he said, "I want your son to meet my family," I thought, well, this is the perfect opportunity. He's intending to marry me, so I was so excited to go. But a couple days before I left, I started to get a pain right below my rib cage, and it was really interesting because every time I took a breath, any deep breaths, it was pretty painful. So I decided to call my brother, who is also a doctor. I come from an entire family of doctors. I'm the only one that did not realize that dream from our father. And I called my brother and he said, "Well, you're young, you're 37 years old, and it must be, this other condition that's very common in young people." But the issue with that is that it mimics pulmonary embolism. And I don't know
Mhm.
if any you know what pulmonary embolisms are. It's like a clot, like when your blood
Mhm.
clots and it
Mhm.
travels to your lung. And if it blocks your heart, you can have a heart attack, or if it goes to your brain, you can have a stroke. So
Mhm.
it's really dangerous to get these things. Well, I had made the mistake of taking birth control pills, because I was dating my second husband and I didn't want to get pregnant. I'm a good Mexican girl. I don't want to get pregnant outside of marriage.
Mhm.
That's the
Mhm.
least of my worries. And so that was the reason why I had gotten pulmonary embolisms. But I don't know this when I get on a flight. So I take a flight from South Texas to Houston, which is the big medical center of Texas. That's miraculous in itself. And we land there, and luckily, he takes one look at me and he says, "You look really pale and you don't look good." And I was not feeling good at all. And I don't know that I have pulmonary embolisms, right?
Mhm.
So luckily, we spend the night. And in the middle of the night, I jolt myself out of bed because the pain is like it felt like an elephant was stepping on my chest.
Mm.
And I could not take a deep breath. And in that moment of just pain and suffering, I heard a prompting come through very clearly. This persistent thought that was like coming out of nowhere saying, "Lean forward and you'll be able to breathe." So that's
Mhm.
miracle. I lean forward and I'm able to breathe. And I do this for 4 hours. And I don't call a soul because I'm thinking it's this condition that my brother had told me I had, right? So he
Yeah.
said, "You're fine. It's going to be painful. It's no big deal." So I don't call my boyfriend who's in a separate room. I just stay like this for 4 hours, which is super dangerous. So for the women listening, don't
Mhm.
ever do that. Pick up the phone and call 911 in that moment. Luckily, I woke up the next morning and I called my brother and I kind of explained the situation, and he said, "Go to the ER immediately, like
Yeah.
now, like stat."
Mhm.
And so we drive over there. I walk in, they do this scan, and I get this specialist come in. This lung specialist comes into my ER. The emergency room, and says, "A woman in your condition should not be sitting up talking to me. You know that pain you felt last night?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "That was the two blood clots were going through your heart to get to your left lung, and they're large. They should have stopped your heart last night, and they did not. But
Oh.
that's not the," he goes, "but that's the least of our worries. We have a bigger worry. Your liver's inflamed, and we don't know why. So you're going to have to stay here." And
Mhm.
I'm sitting there going, and my kid is outside with the guy he's only been with twice before in his life. So I get out there and I get on my phone and I'm like trying to reach my parents so they can fly up. It was a mess. But the miraculous thing was that I was in the biggest medical center in Texas.
Mhm.
I was in the best hospital in the country for my condition.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, this is how
Mhm. Mhm.
miracles work, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And but the very next day, I had six doctors that walked into my room when they do a scan of my lower abdomen, and they start explaining to me, "You have basically a 20% chance of surviving this. You have a big, like your blood is clotting the main organ that supplies blood to your organs. and it's putting pressure on your liver. He
Mm.
said, and if it just blocks it off, you're going to need a transplant. But this is what we're going to do. I'm just sitting there going, okay, well, I'm kind of facing this near death experience, right? And
Mhm.
the only thing going through my mind is surrender. Just surrender control
Mhm.
and trust your my higher power, which for me is God, but for a
Yeah.
lot of people it's not. For a lot of people it's the universe, it's energy. It shows up differently for other people, and I respect that. But for
Mm.
me it's God. And so I just kind of surrender in his loving arms, and I accept whatever is waiting for me in ICU, because they've explained to me, we're going to give you this therapy, but there's a high probability of death
Mm.
if it doesn't work,
Mhm.
you know, for the
Mhm.
next procedure. So the next morning, I obviously survive, and I detail this in my first book. And a woman with the Catholic diocese walks in, because anytime you go to a hospital, has anyone ever like been admitted? They give you all this paperwork that you have to fill out, and
Yeah.
one of the questions is, what religion do you participate in? And at the time, I had been raised Catholic, so I said Catholic. So here comes the Catholic diocese to come and pray with us. And we form a circle. My boyfriend's in the room with me, and we start reciting the Our Father. And the part where it says, "Thy will be done," is
Yeah.
when the entire room fills with this unconditional love. I mean, it's a love I have never experienced in my life.
Mhm.
And I felt peace. And I felt like I knew in that moment that I would be okay, and that long term I would not have complications. Like
Mhm.
immediately there was like a complete knowing in my entire being. And she leaves the room, and my boyfriend turns to me and he says, "You felt them too, didn't you?" And I just started crying. I couldn't even speak. I was just like tears of joy were running down my cheeks. And they wheel me into this place where they're gonna like look to see what the therapy had done. If it had done its job, then great. And but if it didn't, then I was gonna go into surgery, and that meant big probability of death.
Mhm.
And so they wheel me in, and 20 minutes later, the doctor comes out, and his face was so full of joy. Doctors don't really share joy like a lot. They're
Yeah.
always giving you grim news.
Yeah.
And he just looked like his entire face was illuminated. And and he was like, "I cannot believe this. You have no long-term complications. And in a case like yours, you should have holes in your lungs, and you don't. You're completely
Mhm.
clear."
Mhm.
So those are the three miracles I received in the 72 hours. So that's my story. I get a second chance at life.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. And it's not everyone who gets a second chance in life. So anytime that I could have been a past someone gone, I could have been gone right now. You learn to appreciate life and being thankful to God for the second chance that is given you. And I see your joy. I see your uh, gratitude of things happening in your life, and that's what we look for. I mean, to be grateful to God for everything.
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm. um, and then now tell us from that point onwards up to now, things that have been happening in your life.
Wow, you know how life is, you go through waves, right? I always say,
Yeah.
ride the wave when it's good, and when
Hmm.
it's like still, be still in those storms, right?
Yeah.
Because there's
Hmm.
storms that are
Hmm.
always going to be in our lives. And when that wakes you up, when you wake up from that old life, that old identity, if you will, because your identity is tied to it, it was a little tough for me, because like I said, I grew up the modeling and the expectations and somebody else's beliefs. All of this is my armor, right? This
Yeah.
is where the survivor part comes in. We're warriors, we're fighting, we're achieving, we're doing all these things. And then here comes this turning point, and it just kind of like knocks you over the head, and it kind of wakes you up, right?
Hmm.
And the surrender piece was an important piece in my journey, because now I have a more solid relationship with God.
Hmm.
Now I've learned to trust that inner voice in me that some people call intuition.
Mm,
or you call the gut instincts. And I
yeah.
always say God lives in our gut. So I, in my book, call it the God instinct. And you start hearing them when you are still, when you get your mind still. And I started to take a lot of personal development courses because I wanted to understand the power of the mind. I knew
Okay.
that my mind and my fear were getting in my way because the perfectionism and the achiever part were not making me as happy. I
Mm-hmm.
was looking for happiness outside of myself. And that awakening helped me understand that happiness is not there at all. Happiness exists inside of us. And
Yeah.
it is our responsibility to make ourselves happy and not put it on others to make us happy, right? So I start
Mm-hmm.
journeying through this. I marry my boyfriend. I
Mm-hmm.
moved to Austin, Texas. I within a year, I've resigned from medical sales and I've become a mom for a second time in my life. And I'm now 40 years old. So I'm a 40-year-old mom with this newborn, right? And I'm
Yeah.
going through an identity crisis because I'm shedding that old identity. And God
Mm-hmm.
is using this time to chisel off all of those elements from that armor that
Mm-hmm.
don't fit with the person that He created me to be. He
Mm,
needs me to move through His timing. So I
mm,
become a stay at home parent for about 4 years.
yeah.
And one morning, as I'm journaling, because I'm a big writer, like I write, and that's how I quiet my mind in the mornings, I hear a prompting that says, call Bridget. And Bridget McAdams had been my mentor when I took a class from her, a John Maxwell mastermind. And
Mm-hmm.
John Maxwell, for those that are listening, is a big leadership guru. He's world renowned, and he's published a ton of books on leadership. That's what he mostly does.
Mm,
And I took a course and I loved it. And it was the prompting was so strong. And I had learned to act on his promptings because when I've acted, I had received abundance in my life. So I immediately called Bridget and I said, is that offer still available? She had offered me to become part of the John Maxwell team like 3 years before, and I had declined it because I was still operating from fear. See, I
yeah.
was still the achiever perfectionist that
Mm-hmm.
needed to achieve, right? And I needed all these things. And that's what my mind kept telling me. But during those 3 years, I had learned no, I don't need that. I can be happy on my own and I can search for what really brings me joy. So I started the process of becoming a speaker, coach, and trainer with the John Maxwell team that morning after I spoke to my husband, and he was very supportive,
Yeah.
financially, emotionally, mentally, and he said, "Just go for it." And I went for it. And this is in 2017. And
Mm,
I fly to Florida, I get certified, and I start my business, my journey as an entrepreneur.
mm,
But I'm still kind of struggling a little bit, because I'm a parent and I had been such a perfectionist achiever and I had worked 50 to 60-hour work weeks and my children needed me to be there. So there was as a woman, I think we feel this struggle, inner struggle sometimes of like, do we give it our all and become this person that God created you to be? Or
mm-hmm.
is my responsibility to be the mom, the super mom,
Mm,
And
mm-hmm.
there's always that struggle. But you can have it all. It just depends on what your definition of all means, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And you say that you had some limiting beliefs. What were they, and how did you
Okay.
overcome them?
My very first one was I was not enough. I'm not enough for my dad, so I must achieve to be happy, right?
Mm,
And those beliefs get formed early on with trauma in our lives, right? So we're
mm,
carrying
mm,
around all this trauma that's been unhealed inside of our mind and heart. So I believed I was not enough, and I believed I needed to achieve to be worthy as a human
mm.
being. I had
Okay.
tied my worth to a paycheck. So
Okay.
do you imagine when you become a stay-at-home parent,
Yeah.
you don't receive a paycheck anymore? So where's your worth, right? So I'm not
Mm,
worthy.
mm-hmm.
And and those are the elements that God used during His timing to chisel off to
Mm,
show that my significance, I give myself that significance. No one else gives me that significance, not a paycheck, not a corporation. I give myself through my own self-love. And that was the biggest lesson I learned through that timing that I went through,
mm.
up until pre-pandemic times. And then the pandemic hits. And
Okay.
now
And then the pandemic
and now
hit.
we're there.
You are going to tell us a bit about the pandemic season, but before that, I want to appreciate each and every person who's watching us and those who get to watch us after we are through. Itweka Hannah says, "I'm tuned." Yes, tuned in. Thank you, and every other person. If you have a question, if you have a comment, you're welcome to submit, and we appreciate every feedback. So, how did you go through the pandemic?
It was actually a very interesting time for me because another prompting came through, really hardcore prompting, and he would not leave me alone.
Mhm.
And he said, "Write your book. It's time. Trust me." Because he had been prompting me to write a book for 13 years. And
13
for
years.
13 years, my fear of failure was blocking that. I
Mm-hmm.
was I didn't think I was worthy enough or I had a worthy story to share to
Yeah,
bring value to humanity. But who was I to question God when he was prompting me to write the book? Obviously, he knew something that I didn't
yeah, yeah, yeah.
about me, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's the difference between our mind pulling us, our ego identity, and our soul pulling us in a different direction. And when change hits us, like the pandemic was big time change for all of us, right? Our certainty gets pulled from under us. And now we're left with, now what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
And I started to journal my story.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I acted on his promptings, the more the path got revealed to me. And I
Mm-hmm.
started to channel the chapters through me. It started to come down from God, from the Holy Spirit, all these channeled information that eventually became the book Journey to Me, Trust the Wisdom of Change, that was published last year, self-published last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a book that talks about turning points. I share my blueprint on how you can turn a turning point all the way through the transformative experience. When you're going through a spiritual transformation like I went through, it is a time of reflection. It is a time of looking at your life and understanding where how you got to where you were, and is this the place where you want to be at, or do you want to go and explore your divine soul's purpose? And in
Mm-hmm.
my case, I went in the direction of my divine soul's purpose, which is to become an author. So I went from achiever to author during the time of 2017 all the way through to 2021, right?
Wow.
Where he's like chiseling away, and the book helps me heal through all those chapters in my life, and all the fears come out in the open, and
Mm-hmm.
all the patterns of behavior come out in the open of how I was operating from these spaces of fear, and how I was able to just interrupt my ego and drop it and tune in to my soul and understand how my soul, like the voice of my soul, and stepping into that identity.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is to all the people who are listening or watching who may think that they are not enough. Sylvia reminds you that you're just enough. And with God on your side, now you are more than a conqueror. That's what I usually say. And Sylvia is more than a conqueror. She's not just a survivor, she's thriving. And you too. Don't think that you're not enough. That book that you have inside of you, this could be a call. This could be the call coming from Sylvia to go down and put it down on writing and publish it. Uh, and thank you, Sylvia, for being an inspiration to us this wonderful day. Now, uh, are there steps that you would suggest to someone who's here that they can overcome their limiting beliefs? How do they do it? How do I mean? You talked about reflection. Yes, you
There's
reflect.
a lot. Well,
But what?
there's the law of reflection,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one step. One thing that I always talk a lot about is self-care, because as human beings we are go 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 go, achieve 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 achieve. It depends on which country you live in. If you're in the
Mm,
United States, that's a big part of our culture,
yeah.
right? Of our country's culture is to there's it's just go go go. And you see it when Americans travel abroad. You
Mm-hmm.
see it because they want to go to one tour and a second tour and a third tour, and it's like, do you ever rest? So, it depends on the country's culture. So you're in Greece, right? And I'm in Texas, and it's totally different
Yeah.
abroad. And I lived in France, and it's completely different. They take 2-hour lunches. It's unheard of here in the United States. So one of the things that I always talk about is self care. How are you taking care of yourself? How are
Mm-hmm.
you quieting your mind? Because our mind, there's so many thoughts that go through our mind, and really the quality of our thoughts depend on the quality of our life. If
Mm-hmm.
we're entertaining negative thoughts and we're constantly reading it's tragedy and tragic stories, and we have people that are influencing us that don't necessarily have our best interests at heart, that's where you start with your environment.
Mm-hmm.
Take a good look at the 5 people that surround you. Are they people that support your goals in life? Are they people that are speaking words of light? Are they light bringers in your life? If they're not, maybe there's some hard choices you need to make there, right? Are you
Mm-hmm.
sleeping at night? What are you doing to quiet your mind? Some people write. That's how they connect with their higher source of power, right? To,
Mm-hmm.
to connect with their inner voice. Some people go out and walk in nature, right? Some people exercise, some people pray, some people meditate.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever works for you, whatever is within your wheelhouse, do that, but do it consistently every single day, because these beliefs are going to start coming out of you. When you start to introduce positive change in your life, you're going to start to see these things show up in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's different ways that, without really getting too deep into it, the book gets into patterns of behavior, patterns of fear that are out there. And when the pandemic hit, a lot of people wanted to control their circumstances because they felt out of control. And that's a big one out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just to realize and quiet your mind enough to just observe your thoughts for a day.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you thinking that? What feelings are showing up for you? What is triggering you and why? And only you can answer those questions for yourself. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if it's too hard to navigate through that, if you're really facing a big change in your life, get some help. Get a coach to coach you through it. Get someone that's going to help you identify what those beliefs are. Because a lot of them get formed early on in your childhood, like
Yeah.
before the age of 7. It
Mm-hmm.
honestly, that's how usually these limiting beliefs get formed, like before the age of 7, and sometimes it's beliefs that you've attached ha grown an attachment to from your parents. They're not even your beliefs, they're
Mm-hmm.
their beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
but until you start to quiet your mind from the outside noise of the world, you won't hear it. You
Mm.
won't hear that inner voice,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So really the tips is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
self-care.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm glad that you mentioned about daily. It's John Maxwell that says, choose 5 things that you must do on a daily basis, and definitely you're going to get better at whatever it is that you're after. I mean, 5 things
Mhm.
every single day, every single day,
Even if you don't feel like it, like, just
even
push
when you
through it,
don't.
because that's your ego. And ego is not bad, guys. Like, ego is our self-image. But
Mm-hmm.
what is your self-image made of? Is it fear-based beliefs that are driving that ego? Or are you living life in joy? And joy is all around us. It's just our focus is off. We gotta reframe our focus, right? Reframe our lens,
Mm-hmm.
right? What we focus on, we find. What we focus on grows. What we focus on seems real, and ultimately, what we focus on, we become. So
Yeah,
ask yourself, what is my focus? What is my lens currently? How am I receiving information? Through a negative lens or through a positive lens?
it's a
Heck, even
choice.
neutral is better than
It is a
anything,
choice.
right?
And it's a choice. And at this point, let me ask you now: what's in the future? What are your plans? What dreams are you looking for? Things that you want to accomplish ahead?
You know what? God has been like really speaking into me about becoming more of a speaker and an author. Really,
Hmm.
the writing is where my gifts are.
Yeah.
I have you asked me what I've been doing or why I've been so busy lately is over the summer I was approached to do chapters for compilation books, and those were beautiful to write for me because it didn't have as much responsibility as a full book. Like my first
Okay.
book was my book; it was 15 chapters. That's a lot of responsibility. That's a lot
Mhm.
of chapters to write. But
Sure.
when they say, "Can you write a chapter here or a chapter there?" it's still solidifying myself as an author.
Hmm.
So I'll be on podcast interviews, hopefully talking about these stories because everybody's story matters. There's always a lesson to be learned, and we are all beings of light. We have such light to bring to humanity. And when you keep quiet on your stories, you're really not fulfilling that purpose that you were
Mhm.
put on this earth for. So if you feel that pull to to write a book, to be a speaker, to be a coach, to step out of that box that you've lived in all your life, do it. Because the more you do it, the more you see your path before you. It's that first step that's always the hardest. But really, honestly, release that control, because control is simply an illusion we have created in our mind to keep us in our boxes
Mhm.
and keep us stuck really where we're at. So
So just do it, says
just
Sylvia.
do it.
Just
I
do
don't
it.
want to take it from Nike. That's Nike's logo or slogan or whatever, but I'm all for it. Just do it.
Just
Step
do
in
it.
there
Yeah.
with confidence.
Yeah. And now someone may be interested in connecting with you, maybe tapping that positive energy and that faith, maybe getting your book. How can they connect with you?
I'm really available everywhere, all social media sites. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. That's really the bulk of my work for those professionals that are
Hmm.
out there. I had a YouTube channel. I had some videos on there, so you could see some of my past work on YouTube. But really, to connect with me, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, everything except TikTok. I'm on Clubhouse as well under Sylvia Worsham. I'll be on virtual stages. And I'm doing a lot of these podcast interviews with a lot of these amazing podcast hosts, which I am so grateful to have met. And to get the book, it's available internationally. It's available. If you just type in Journey to Me, Trust the Wisdom of Change, it should pop up. Barnes and Nobles has it in the United States. Amazon has it for those that subscribe to Amazon. And for those that want to uh, meet me personally and get an autographed copy, I can always send it to you as
Right.
well. And just I'll leave you my email, Anthony,
Yeah.
so you can include it in the notes.
Okay. And you also have a website.
Yes, I do. SylviaWorsham.com.
Yeah. So that's www.sylviaworsham.com. Empowering and transforming lives. You should connect with Sylvia. Now, why not TikTok?
I don't know. It just I look at it and I think teenagers, and I don't know. I'm almost 50 years old, so I kind of feel weird.
I, I ask because I'm on TikTok and I say this is what
Maybe
I.
you can sing and dance, but I don't know.
No,
I
no,
always see
no,
it
no,
as a singing
not really.
dancing site.
Not really. And now since you brought TikTok up, is not really that way. Again, when you just download the app and you just scroll, anything or from anywhere can just come up. But once you have a profile, then you focus on your area. We have some great things there. We have people who are in religion, we have people who are in motivation, we have, it's where you focus. That's what's going to appear on your TikTok account. Anyway,
Oh, cool.
I'm not trying to convince you to be on TikTok.
I don't know about the time factor, Anthony. I post on all social media sites, and after a while, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of sites.
Yeah, yeah, they can be
When you're a
overwhelming.
one woman show, or you have some people helping you, but it's not like a big team of people, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So thank you very much for coming to this episode. We really appreciate. But before we go, we'd like you to leave us with a few words that we should always remember. What are they?
you are beings of light. You have so much to give this world. You really do. And it really is up to you. It's a choice that you're making daily, whether you step into your power, step into your purpose, step into that beautiful soul identity that is screaming at you daily, whispering to you to step into your power. Listen to that inner voice, because that's where your answers are at. Those answers you're looking for, they're not outside of you. And don't wait for something horrible or tragic to happen to you, because not everybody gets a second chance at life. Today is a day to start. Today is a clean slate. Your past is your past. Your future will be your future. Your present is where it matters right now, because in this present moment is where God and your higher power live, where you will receive your guidance, where you will make your dreams come true.
I have nothing to add to that. They got it, they had it, and they are going to apply it in their own lives. So, once again, thank you. All the listeners, all those who are watching us, we thank you. And if you've been going through something, now it's a time to come from being a survivor into a thriver. Now, use this episode of Sylvia to go towards your destiny and fulfill your purpose on this planet. That's about it for today's episode. I've been your host, Anthony Morore, and together with my guest, Sylvia Worsham, we are saying bye for now.
Adios. Bye.